Hi everyone, welcome to the Vinh and Ali show, where with this particular show we're going to be reviewing the book Essentialism. And welcome, Ali.
Thanks, Vin. Welcome to you too. This is very formal of us.
It kind of is because, well, this is the first podcast we're doing where we've decided not to put on video. I guess it's almost in the spirit of essentialism. What's essential when it comes to doing a podcast is really just your voice and my voice.
Yeah, I think it's also because of your face. It's probably better that we just.
Yeah, that's yes, I agree. I agree.
I wanted to just get in first because I knew you were probably going to say that to me. So.
Well, yeah, no, that's fair call. Thanks, Ali. Thanks for making me feel very vulnerable right at the start of the call. Well, I mean, I really liked this book because I felt like the previous few podcasts we've been doing, we've kind of been touching on quite a few points that this book brings to the surface. You know, and I love the word essentialism as well. You know, that's kind of usually used with the word minimalism. You know, less is more. So to me, I really liked the concept of this book, and I loved how the book started immediately with a story about how the author was. Now, remind me, did he miss his wife's birth, the birth of his children, or did he attend the birth and then go to a meeting right after?
From my memory, it was he might have been there, but he was essentially checked out while it was all happening. Or
no, but he attended a client meeting. So what happened was whether he missed the birth or not, he right afterwards attended a work meeting. And while he was at the work meeting, he felt like he was doing the right thing for his boss, but even his boss felt weird about it. You know, like, oh, dude, why are you even here? And even the customers that were there were thinking, why are you even here?
Yeah.
You know, you just had a child. You should be with your family. And I think that was the story he started the book with, which kind of threw him into the world of essentialism of, you know, what really matters, right?
And it's a pretty powerful thing, right? Like one of the things, and we'll jump into this a little bit, but the thing that I really like about this book is how he focuses on the power of choice. And that, you know, that story that you just mentioned there, that was nearly a reactive type of situation, or a situation where he felt that, all right, well, I have to do this thing because it's work and we're trained that work's so important and I have to attend there, and then ultimately misses out on a really important life moment. So yeah, the fact that he then created this book where it's, you know, even the subline is the disciplined pursuit of less, where it really touches on that point that in modern lives, in our modern lives at the moment, that we've got so many things going on. And for a lot of us, we end up making choices like what he did. And that story resonates on a personal level. I remember in 2016 when we had our second child, we were in the middle of a pretty big negotiation for the business, and it was quite a major partnership. And I still remember that the 2 or 3 days leading up to Romeo's birth, this deal was happening. And so much of my mind was on this deal, even though we were going through, you know, such a special moment. Like, I didn't miss the birth, thankfully, but there was still an element of my mindset, energy, and focus that just wasn't on Chantal and what was happening at that time, because I was still trying to get, you know, this deal. And now when I think about it, five years later, I'm like, wow, that was such a pointless, well, not pointless, but it feels like such an insignificant thing that took up so much mental focus. And
Wow.
like it resonates. And I'm sure other people probably have the same thing where you know you're experiencing a really special moment, but because of the games that you're in or work or whatever it is, there's something else that's still trying to occupy that space. So yeah, agree. There's some really cool things in this book that I'm excited to explore.
Well, I think we should start with the choice, right? I mean, I think a lot of the times in society we feel like we have to do everything. You know, it's the whole, why should I choose when I should just try to get everything? Why just do one thing when I can do it all? I think there's an obsession with doing it all, And I love this one quote from the book where the author says, only once you give yourself permission to stop trying to do it all and stop saying yes to everyone, can you make your highest contribution towards the things that really matter. And I love that idea that if we try to do it all, we can't make our highest contribution to the world. And if we start saying no, we actually can then make room for the highest form of contribution possible.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you feel it, but how overwhelming is it when you're trying to do 50 different things at the same time? Like you end up doing all of them poorly. It's just the reality, isn't it?
I'm thinking back to my early entrepreneurial days, and one of the most common things among entrepreneurs early in their journey is that they try to do everything. You speak to any entrepreneur in their late teens or early 20s, and there's almost a pride that comes with, I'm currently doing 5 different things, 10 different things. I have 2 different companies or whatever. There's a huge amount of pride that comes with that. The whole idea of doing a lot of things almost came with a badge, like a badge of honor that you're extremely effective and efficient because you're able to do so many things. And I think when I looked back at that kind of entrepreneurial community, those that are still doing 5 to 10 different things at any given time, they haven't had that much progress. Whereas the entrepreneurs that I found that really started to focus and say no to a lot of different things and now only do one thing, they have huge progress. So to me, I saw that very early on in my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a pretty common story. It starts off like that for like nearly every entrepreneurial story that you hear. It starts off where it's like 1, 2, maybe 3 people, and they're doing absolutely everything, right? Like from delivering the mail outs to organizing the meetings to writing the strategy, replying to all the emails, customer service. And it becomes very clear. And I think maybe it's a little bit of both. Like at the start, when you have a small team and you're still trying to figure out your way, you need to kind of do a little bit of everything. But very quickly, for most entrepreneurs, you end up seeing that is quite unsustainable. And at some point, whether it's 6 months into the journey, 12 months into the journey, the roles need to get defined a little bit more. You need to get people with skill sets so they can do the functions that need to be performed. Like it's not really that sustainable. And you're right. Like it's got a limited shelf life. And even just as humans, we have energy and we have a finite amount of energy and bandwidth and focus. And there's only so many things that you can do in any given day.
Yeah, and it also highlights the point that you have to get very clear on what you're good at and very clear on what you want, because otherwise you end up doing too many different things, right? It's like in the case of the entrepreneur, the sooner you start to realize what the most effective thing you do is in your business, the sooner you start to focus on that, and the sooner you can help fill the business with other people who can focus on the things they're good at. It's the whole, when the entrepreneur tries to do everything, like you said before, I remember that so vividly when I tried to do the marketing as well as do the prospecting and then client management. And like when I tried to do all of that, man, I didn't get anywhere. So essentialism isn't just a way of life. It's also a way to be able to run your business.
Yeah. And I think just in general, it's probably a really cool method to just increase performance across the board. Like we've spoken about it in previous episodes around things like the 80-20 rule, some of the teachings in the 4-Hour Work Week episode, which is a lot about prioritization and choosing the right things and the most impactful things. Like there's that concept that I think is really, really cool. It's like, and I think I'm pretty sure it's in this book too, where it's make that one decision or that one choice that eliminates 1,000. And that's been said a few different ways in a few different books, where it's like, find that key domino that when you push that, it looks after everything else, and all of these methods, or the 80-20 rule or the 90-10 rule, where it's look at that 10% of things that are going to give you 90% of the outcomes. Like all of these things point to the fact that in many aspects of life, doing 1 to 2 to 3 really impactful things that might be a little bit difficult or require a higher level of risk, commitment, depth, whatever it is, are likely to have a significant impact on the outcome. And that's something that's hard to do. And I think just given the reactive nature and of how life pans out, it's hard to just focus in, but being more proactive in how you make those decisions and the choices and the actions you take definitely has benefit, like we've seen.
I think this is one of the reasons why I often feel overwhelmed. I think I feel overwhelmed because I haven't really learnt how to say no. And I do live in the mindset of why not have it all?
Yeah.
I feel that I'm still kind of early in my essentialism journey because I often find myself wanting it all. You know, wanting a better house, wanting a better car. Like I do find myself trapped in that. And so reading this book for me was really helpful because it reminded me that by saying no, that's important too, because sometimes what you don't do is just important as what you do, right? And I always focus on the things that I have to do. Like I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, but it's also about what you don't do. Yeah. So but then when I thought about it more with this book, I feel like this author is writing the book for a very particular socio-economic bracket, right? Because I'm just trying to think, for someone who isn't financially well off and for someone who isn't financially abundant, sometimes you don't have that much of a choice. Because I look at my dad, and when my dad and my mum just came to Australia as refugees and they didn't have anything, they didn't have much choice. You know, they just worked at whatever job they could, and they did work at 2 different jobs. And so choice is something to me, because the book didn't really address that. So I'm wondering, did you get a sense of that in the beginning of the book? Did you feel that, oh, this book is only written for those who are financially abundant already and have achieved some levels of financial comfort?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think this point crosses over with so many books in, call it professional development, personal development space, where, you know, it's always that argument. It's like, well, yeah, the teaching here is really, really great, but I'm balancing 3 kids as a single parent, and my boss is on me every single day. How am I meant to get the time to implement all these things? You know, and it's such a tough thing to answer. Like, yeah, what do you do? My kind of theory on it is that if you're reading a book like this, or if you're listening to this podcast, or if you're attending an event where you're trying to improve an aspect of your life, you're probably at the space or the time in your life where there's alignment for these things to happen. You know, like say, for example, when you're looking at that example of your parents, do you think your dad would have been reading Essentialism at that point in time? like where, you know, maybe just the timing wouldn't be right because, you know, your focus is on different things at that period. So I think it's more time, place, like hopefully for the people that are listening to this, or they are at a point where, yes, some of the, like life's at the point where some of these tools can be implemented or executed upon. And if not, it might even just be preparation. It's like, all right, well, right now I've got heaps of things going on that I have to deal with. And, but my goal is within 3, 6, 12 months to start getting to a point where I only have 3 to 5 things on my to-do list. That might be the move. But also on the flip side, like even if you look back at your parents' story, I'm sure there would have been aspects of essentialism that would have occurred for them to get to where they eventually got to.
For sure. My dad at one point bought a Nissan 300Z unnecessarily. Because he was still a young man and really wanted a sports car. And I remember it was a red 300Z, Nissan 300Z. And the first week we bought it, it broke down. And that was, my mum hated that car because, you know, there was 4 seats, but the 2 back seats were pretty much useless. And it would always break down. And my dad had, you know, all our savings went into fixing my dad's damn sports car. But again, I think you're right. Now that I really think about it, yeah, absolutely. I still think it applies. It's just that there was this thought that popped into my head just now. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is just Yeah, but I think you're right. It applies in all stages of life, really. Because even for myself as a struggling entrepreneur, there were definitely things that I didn't need to do. There were definitely things that I didn't need to spend my money on, but I did because I didn't really understand a lot of the concepts in this book, and then still trying to understand and really master.
For sure. And even if I think back to, like we've come from migrant families and, our upbringings weren't silver spoon based. We've seen the struggle. But even then, I think about it when our family was in times of pretty much survival mode. There were still decisions that were made that probably tick the boxes of essentialism, right? Like if I think about my parents, like say moving to Australia, for example, that's a pretty big move that probably tick the boxes for essentialism. Your family, escaping the war and taking the risk and the journey to cross the oceans, for a better and safer life. Like that's a pretty big essential, like that's a domino move. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
maybe it happens. Like maybe socioeconomic factors play a little bit of a role, but I think everyone, if you look back over a period of 10, 20, 30 years, most people will have 5 to 10 decisions or actions that they've taken that had significant impacts on their life.
And I think the whole point of that, is that even though there are 5 to 10 decisions we made that were very essential and kind of, that 90-10% rule, I feel like there's probably another 100 decisions that we've made that weren't essential. And I guess the whole thing we are questioning is, imagine a life where, let's say you did have 100 decisions to make where you actually made all of them essential.
Yeah.
And that's something to aspire to. I don't think it's even humanly possible, but it's that, I guess that's what we're saying here, right? Is that if you made more essential decisions and stopped making decisions that were non-essential, imagine the life you'd have. Imagine the impact you'd have. And I remember reading one line from this book where it said, when you understand that almost everything in your life is non-essential, you'll start to be able to think like an essentialist. And that statement really hit me, because imagine that. Almost everything in your life right now, Ali, is non-essential. That's insane.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
One. Oh, it's so, well, you know that I'm a big fan of this type of thinking, right? So I've probably gone the other way over the years where I've maybe pushed the needle too far with saying no and emptying the list to the level where there's literally nothing on it. And that's got like a,
you've even shaved your hair. Your hair's gone. You're like, the hair's not essential. It's going.
Like I've done so many of those little moves. Like I remember once, this is probably the most extreme level that I went to, which I do regret. So I remember trying to make a rule where I had had certain like a period of time every morning where no one in the family could chat to me for like 2 hours.
What do you mean?
Get my day sorted. So it was essentially, we're going to keep using that word. I think it was something like between the hours of 7 to like 10 a.m. I just got to get my day right, and like it's completely blocked out.
But what do you say to the family? What do you say to the family?
So to Chantel, it was like, can you just make sure? I think this was, I'm trying to think when this was. It was maybe 6-7 years ago. So it might have even been pre-kids.
Wow.
Yeah, but that didn't really fly, or I had times where it was just no meetings 3 days a week for these period of times. And then that after a while just ended up sort of banking up. You diminish some relationships because you're saying no too often, and then people don't actually come and reach out to you for any of the things that you want them to reach out to you for. So there can be a flip side when you go too extreme down the essential path. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like we say, there's always the balance. It's somewhere in between. And I know that from emptying it too far, that also led to some negative effects.
What were the negative effects?
Probably
when you emptied it too far.
It's a little bit of disconnections, probably a big one. Because if you think about saying no, generally you're saying no to another human, right? So, and from what I've seen, most people, if they have a request or if they're close to you and you have an established relationship, it can be a little bit jarring.
Or especially if it's your wife.
But if you think about practicing essentialism to the ultimate level, it's generally saying that you have to prioritize the most important things to you at that given moment in time, right? Like, and I was being silly at that moment because I wasn't actually seeing what was the most important things. I thought it might have been, things like building the business or doing a few of these other bits and pieces, but you learn pretty quickly that that's not really what it's about. I think, and so it's a tricky balance in terms of, and here's the other bit, right? If you get too stringent with saying no to like so many things, you miss the serendipity in life as well. Because you can't just take on those things. So then I actually went the opposite way where I read this book. I can't remember what it was called. It was something like The Art of Surrender or The Surrender Experiment, something like that. And it was another story of an entrepreneur that went nearly the opposite. He was like a hippie living out in a farm, went down the road of meditation, was a professor. But it's nearly a story of somebody that just kind of accepted everything in life. So
go with the flow.
Just go with the flow. Go say yes to everything. So if I look at it, I think that one of the downsides of, say, the Tim Ferriss style, the essentialism style of thinking, is that it can provide you with a framework that's too stringent and it can become really isolating if you go too hard down that path of essentialism. And that's why I think a lot of the examples are things like people who are an author, and they'll just lock themselves in the office or the cafe for 5 hours and just write. But it depends what you want is probably what I'm getting to. It's like if you've got way too many things on your list, maybe use some of the aspects of essentialism to prioritize a little bit better. If you're somebody that has heaps and heaps of control of your time and you dictate your day exactly how you want, maybe you need to go the other way and put in a few things that aren't essential so that you can live and experience more aspects of life.
And you just leave room for serendipity and luck, right? And it's funny you say that because every time we talk about anything, we ultimately arrive at the middle.
Yeah.
It's like if you become a 100% elite essentialist, you're probably lacking, again, that serendipity, maybe even connection, maybe even relationships that are deep and meaningful, potentially. Maybe not. Maybe you can work your way around it. But to me, again, I love what you said there, that you may miss out on things that may happen because of serendipity.
Yep, for sure.
Okay.
And I think
if you had to make a list of things that are essential to you, what would you start? What would your list look like?
Oh, great question. All right, let's do one. Let's do one for one.
One each. Okay. All right, one for one.
Okay, so we'll pick 5. So now, for me, every day, I love reading. So I want to read at least for 30 minutes to an hour every single day. That would be one that would be right up there on my list.
Okay. Love that. Totally agree with that. And I have that on my list as well. And I can tell you that I do the dishes every day. Just saying.
Yep.
And I listen to a book while I'm doing it now. So I tell my wife, I say to pay when, I just go, let the dishes pile up all day. And at night, I'll smash it. And it takes me like 45 minutes to do. But to me, that's how I get my 45 minutes of reading in, right? So so I agree. Okay.
That's an awesome one. That is such a cool one. I like that. I love the idea of combining a couple of activities, especially when one of the activities is nearly autonomous. Something like going for a walk and then maybe reading a book, or doing the dishes and reading a book. Like, that's cool. It's really cool compounding.
Well, another one that I compound, which will be the one I'll choose next, is when I exercise, I now have kind of mounted a TV in front of my bike. So then I can ride for 45 minutes and watch one of my shows that I want to watch that Pay When never wants to watch. So all of a sudden, and I've got Jack Ryan on. So that's another great hack, because if I'm learning and then I'm also enjoying myself while I'm exercising, that's a win, because that's kind of personal time and exercise time rolled into one.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're combining a reward as well to develop a really positive habit too.
Yeah. And I found that I've just started this in the last kind of week and a half. I've been able to get on the bike daily because it's being paired with a reward. Whereas before it was just kind of paired with an instructor that's screaming at me on Peloton.
I like that. I like that. Cool.
What's another one for you?
My next one is every night I do bedtime with the kids. So that's one that's completely essential. So we'll do like half an hour, lying in bed, watching soccer highlights or chatting, reading a book, just having a hug, whatever that looks like. So that's sort of like the connection, just making sure that even if the day's crazy or whatever, we have at least that period of time that's fully locked in.
Oh man, that's awesome. Right now for me, I'm trying to have just daddy and Xander time because I think, we spoke about this. One of the things that I always do is I say, oh, family time, that's great. But during family time, I'm with my wife and my son. Whereas now I kind of have way more one-on-one time with Xander. So to me, yeah, that I agree with that. I do a lot of one-on-one time with Xander as well. Okay.
It's cool how so many of our like podcast episodes are reflecting where we're at in life. I know just a little bit of a side track. Like I remember thinking about the episode that we did on parenting and how such a big realization of ours was, how do we make play fun? How do we become more present as fathers? How do we change those things? So it's cool. Like even for people that are listening, like hopefully this generates thought around not only listening, but hopefully it generates ideas or actions for potential changes.
And selfishly, and selfishly for me, every time I do one of these podcasts, I'm kind of speaking things into existence. It's when I say something, then I end up doing it because I said it. It's kind of interesting as well.
It's like public accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, if I had to pick another one, I've realized for me that every day, not every day, but at least 5 days a week for me, I have to put aside at least 4 to 5 hours of deep work. Like I need that. And I think it's because at the core of who I am an entrepreneur. And when I'm not doing deep work, for example, this is a week I've taken a lot of this week off because my son's been sick, my wife's not feeling well. And even for me, I've just lack of sleep. We're trying to sleep train my son right now in his own room. And then I've been getting up later. I haven't been putting in a good 4 to 5 hours of really deep work. And I find myself to be really unhappy. I thought that, sleeping in and not working, and I thought that would have made me happy. But I actually really value deep work. Like that's an essential thing for me. And if I don't get a good, 20 hours or 25 hours of deep work in every week, I don't feel good.
That's really good awareness. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, it was an interesting experiment for me in the last couple of weeks where the moment that dropped off, and now because I schedule everything because of you too, Ali, I see when I missed the mark and I look back and I'm like, why am I feeling kind of shitty this week? And it's just because I went, wow, I didn't move forward with my business, with the projects that I'm working on.
Yep. And it's so cool, this exercise, because I think everyone has maybe somewhere between 3 to 7 of these that can just be implemented as little checkpoints and triggers to realign your life a little bit more. Like that. And one of the cool things here too, that just as I'm hearing us talk about this, is where we're being pretty specific with even the amount of time that we want to allocate to these activities, right? Like, or you have a pretty good understanding that it's not a generic throwaway line like, I need to do deep work. That it's 4 to 5 hours a day, maybe averaging 20 hours a week. Like that's pretty cool when you have that level of specificity around the amount of time and energy that you want to then allocate to that activity. Like we were speaking about before, like
that's interesting.
30 minutes to an hour doing the dishes or with the kids or whatever it is. And then you break.
I said 45 minutes.
Sorry, 45 minutes. So it's that concept of you can nearly start designing a day off the back of this. You can start breaking it down hour by hour. And, even you were speaking before, like depending on circumstances and overwhelm, I think it's nearly a little bit of chicken and egg, and this could sometimes be a little bit controversial because you don't know everyone's circumstances. But generally what I've found when somebody says, look, I would love to do this, but I'm too busy, It's sort of that sentence contradicts itself. It's like, well, you're going to be in a continuous cycle of that then. If you can't, like, something's going to have to give at some point where you start scheduling it. And the recommendation there would be is, look, you might have 24 hours in a day and 16 hours of those might have to be fully reactive because of life. But if you're still using half an hour to check news sites, to go on social media, to watch a TV show, whatever it is, that means that you do have at least 30 minutes or 60 minutes there for the essential, for where you pick something or an activity that you've been putting off. And it's one of the things that I've heard so much during COVID as well, like a couple of friends, and it's just so hilarious and such great self-awareness, where they've been like, well, it definitely wasn't a lack of time. That wasn't the reason why I didn't do that project that I've been putting off for 2 years, because I've just had months during lockdown and I still didn't do it. So it's on me. And I think taking that ownership and having the awareness of, all right, well, maybe me saying that I'm just completely overwhelmed and too busy is a little bit of a cop-out, because it doesn't have to be 5 hours or 2 hours. If you can do something proactive, even for 30 minutes, I think you then start taking control and ownership for how you dictate your life a little bit more.
But here's the thing though, Ali, it's so hard to know what is essential. I mean, right now you and I are rattling off a list of what's essential to us, but you know, that took a lot of time, and it sounds so simple and even generic or even trite, because it seems so straightforward, but I had to understand what kind of work. I had to understand how long, when am I going to do that work? So for me, it's essential that I do my work, my deep work, early in the morning, between 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. You know, like I know this, and I only know this because of a lot of time spent experimenting.
It's true.
You know, and it's like the exercise. I had to kind of pair that with personal time, because again, it's now as parents, I can't sit down by myself and watch an hour and a half show anytime I want to. I can't do that, you know, and I can't, you know, sit down and just do, I don't know, 2 hours of reading. I have to pair that with something else so that I'm still contributing to the household. And I think that's another one I'd put on the list, is that contribution is a big one for me. So it's, when I feel like I'm contributing, whether it's to my family or the world, I feel good. I feel good, because that is a form of giving. And I know that that's something I need. Like, again, for me, doing the dishes, like I said to Pei Wen, look, leave it to me. I'll do that every day. Don't worry. And the moment I do that, I feel like I'm contributing to my family, and, you know, the house is clean, and it makes my wife really happy. So contribution is a big one for me too.
It's a really good point. And I think evolving that list, because life keeps changing, right? So that list isn't really static. Like, what's essential is always going to be a moving target too. Because as you mentioned there, it's different to when you're like, when I was 18, it was essential for me to go out with my mates, right? Yeah. Like that was essential. True. Whereas now it's essential to do bedtime with the kids. Right. And you're right. Like, depending on what's going on, but maybe that's the thing. And even if the one takeaway is from this is just find one thing that's essential that you want to commit to doing, you know, and maybe that's the starting point, is like, right now, where you're at in life, what's one thing that you feel is essential that you're either putting off or you're not doing enough off, you'd like to do more off. And hopefully most people listening will have at least one of those things that just comes top of mind.
And I reckon get really specific about it as well. I mean, one of the things that the book talks about is the importance of thinking, and how we live in a world that's filled with so many things that cause addiction. Again, social media, our phones, YouTube videos, everything. And because everything is competing for our attention, the one thing that loses out is your own clarity on what is essential. And the busier we get, the more addicted we get, the more important it is for us to actually spend time thinking about what's essential. I literally thought about, yesterday I looked up online about trains and how I could catch a train from one destination to another that would take days. Because I actually want to get on a train and go for 3 or 4 days on a journey around Australia by myself, just putting myself through the process of kind of mapping out what's essential for me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, right? I mean, and I started looking it up, and it's actually pretty doable. There's the Garn, there's another one, I can't remember what it's called, the Pacific or something, and there are 2 trains you can take, and it kind of takes you all around Australia. And
that's a pretty cool way of doing it.
There's something about moving and being on the move and seeing changing scenery that to me felt like it would inspire creativity. It would inspire, and the fact that you're stuck on the train and you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Also felt really enticing to me.
I love that. It's a bit like when you're on the plane, when you're on a long haul flight.
Yeah.
Somewhere around the 5-6 hour mark, you end up just getting into a really nice space because there's been no distractions, there's generally no Wi-Fi. You've watched a movie, you're moving, you're at altitude. Yeah, I love that idea. That's such a cool concept.
Maybe we could do that sometime together, but not talk to each other the entire way.
Yeah, we'll just be in separate carriages. And like
absolutely.
Meet like at the stop.
Just for meals. And then just for meals. No,
do a
there's a meal carriage. So there's carriages you walk through to go to have your meals, and then you go back to your own room. So we could just meet for meals and then do our own deep work, right?
100% in. I think
maybe that's something. Yeah, I like the idea of that too.
There's just going to be like hundreds of people or tens of people just on this train in separate carriages.
And we have to dress like
what's essential.
No, and then we have to dress like we're from the 1930s and wear top hats, okay? Just
a monocle.
Speak with an English accent.
One of those watches that like clips to your waistcoat.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely.
A compass.
And don't shower and be extremely dirty.
Yeah, that's a given.
That's a given. No, but the point I was going to make was that the reason why I thought of that was simply because even for me, and I think even for you, as someone who is fairly conscious of trying to think about things and do things with purpose and kind of being more intentional about things, I find myself being trapped and not thinking as much as I want to. And you have to actually schedule time to think, and really review what is essential. And I love what you said to people is get a list of what's essential, because I feel like that's usually the biggest reason why we don't do the reason why we get sucked into things like social media or watching videos on YouTube for 2 hours. The reason those things happen is because we don't know what's essential. We haven't spent time to think about what is essential for us.
Yep. And it's so hard. Like, I would say we're relatively well practiced at this. It's something we've been looking at for a number of years. And it's still so difficult to master. Like, the power of the device especially is insane. Like, I'd love to sit here and say, oh yeah, I've mastered the phone and I never do anything just for dopamine hits, but it's still there. No matter how much you practice it, it's really difficult to not check the footy scores or your email account or Slack if you use it, your social media channels. It takes such a disciplined effort to be able to do it, and especially to do it consistently. Even just simple things like notifications, right? Like, before we go, real question. I think notifications should nearly be illegal. Like, the fact that, like, I've seen people's phones where there are hundreds of notifications, like a notification popping up every 1 minute or like 30 seconds, 10 seconds. And it's like, how are you meant to get like any peace or focus if that's happening on your phone? Like, it's nuts that that's the thing that happens. And so maybe that's just one tip, is like, just turn off all the notifications.
Yeah, I remember us saying this in a podcast before, and I completely agree. I don't have any red numbers appearing on my phone at all. Yep. And I've turned off all notifications. But here's the real question I wanted to ask you. What's your screen time? What's your average screen time daily?
I spend a fair bit of time on my phone.
No BS. No BS. What is it?
Yeah, it's high. Like, I'd say around somewhere between 6 and 9 hours a day.
Wow. What the?
Yeah.
And how much of that is, would you say, work, and how much would you say is procrastination?
Yeah, it's broken down. So I work primarily from my phone. So I'd say 50% would probably be 40 to 50% would be work out of that. I'd say 25% would be 25 to 30% would be like entertainment. So, and for entertainment and like infotainment. So it'd be a mix of like Audible, reading books, Netflix, whatever it is. I generally now just watch shows on my phone as well.
Wow.
Yeah. And then 10 or let me get my phone. What's yours? We could break it down. We can have a look.
Mine on average is about mine on average is about 6 hours.
6 hours. Do you use like a laptop and computer as well?
Well, yeah, and I would say that I got better with it. I got it down to about 3 hours, 2 hours, and then now it's creeping back up because of being hooked onto things that don't really matter. You know, I got really hooked into the news cycle at one point, you know, tracking what's happening between the Australia and China relations. And I got like so down the rabbit hole with that and started watching all these videos. And no joke, every day I'll check it, spend an hour looking things up around that. And, you know, caught up in the cryptocurrency news. And then there's a few guys I follow on YouTube and then end up watching hours of their content daily. And then it's like, no, I have to stop. This is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, because when I watch that, I go, okay, so when I watch that news, what do I do with the information that I've been given? Nothing. I don't do anything with it. And it's like, okay, so I watched, you know, 5 cryptocurrency videos, one a day for the last 5 days. What have I done with that news? Nothing except panic.
Yeah, all it's done is caused me some anxiety.
It just,
there's stuff out there that I can't control.
It just,
that I now
that's
know
right.
about. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Right. And then then after that, I end up, you know, on Instagram, and then you watch everybody's stories, and then you feel shitty about your own life. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I've fallen victim to that again. So to me, what's cool now is that I'm aware of it, and reading this book has helped me as well. And is saying to me, well, is this really an essential thing? So now I've got a target of trying to get it back down to 2 hours.
That's it. That's cool again, though. Like having and again, I think so much of this is just awareness. You know, it's so easy to feel shitty about ourselves. You know, like that's when we do these behaviors that everyone's doing. You know, like what you've explained. Like, to me, it reminds me of meditation. You know, everyone wants to meditate right now, and it's like such a buzz thing. But then I speak to so many people that feel guilty because they're like, oh, I meditated, but my mind was off in the clouds. Or I meditated and I got uncomfortable and I stopped meditating. Or I was meditating and then I got a
Isn't that the whole point? So that you can get to the clouds?
And it has like this reverse sort of impact. And this happens to me sometimes as well because I'm always like, that's a practice that I like doing. But then sometimes I find myself getting attached to it as well. Like you nearly get attached to the way that you practice whatever that thing is that you're trying to do to improve yourself, you know, whether it's working out or whatever it is. And then it starts nearly becoming a little bit of a weight rather than this thing that's meant to be benefiting you because it's now causing you things like, oh, well, I missed that day. Now I need to make up 2 sessions. So that's something that I'd love to explore a little bit more around how do we then overcome that sort of feeling? Because it's nearly like, it's like a self-inflicted feeling of failure nearly, right?
Yeah, it really is.
Because then at some point you'll catch yourself on that news site. Like I'll do it too. I'll go on news.com or whatever it is. And then I'll just be like, what did I just read? Like feel gross. It's like I just spent 3 minutes reading this article that I can't even remember now. That's going to have no impact on my life.
I read one recently about an AFL player's wife cheating on him. And I was like, why am I even reading this? I don't even watch the football.
I don't even
know who it is.
The rules to the game.
I know, but I clicked on it because the photo looked really evil, and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" But look, I really agree with that point, and I can tell you that I don't nearly feel as bad about it anymore, though. Like I don't beat myself up over it. It's because to me, I think I finally understood something about this whole process. And it's that it's not about not falling off the bandwagon. It's not about that because it's inevitable. You are going to click on it. You are going to go on social media. You are going to go down the rabbit hole. You are going to stop exercising. You are going to eat that chocolate. It's fine. to me, it's all about just being aware enough so that when you fall off the bandwagon, it doesn't take you 3 weeks to get back on. You get back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
So that's one of the ways where I stop myself from beating myself up over it. Is I go, damn it. Okay, sure, I may have had a terrible day or a terrible week, but I've just tried to get better at shortening the time period in which it gets me back on. Like, instead of taking 3 weeks to get back on, I'm able to get back on after a week. I'm aware enough now to go, okay, I've only exercised once this week. Damn it. Instead of kicking yourself for the next 7 days, just get back on tomorrow.
Yeah. It's such a good tip, because I think that's what happens as well, is we nearly go the opposite way when we fall off the proverbial wagon, right? It'll be like, oh, well, now that I've stopped exercising, I might as well just not. And then
I might as well just give up for the rest of my life.
like I might as well now just eat burgers instead. Like,
for the rest of my life.
Since we missed 3 days in a row, like, this is over. And it's so easy to just completely lose it. Whereas, and there's some really cool hacks. Like, I can't remember who it was, and the tip was, don't set yourself a goal of doing 100 push-ups. Set yourself a goal of doing 1 push-up. And then once you do 1, there's a very good chance you're going to do more than 1. Right? Like, don't set the goal of having, I don't know, an hour's worth of meditation every single day. Maybe set the goal of it being a minute, and then, then building from that. So it's always an upside, and then maybe it removes some of that weight as well. Makes it a little bit easier too, because there can be a trap in, especially with habits. People are so focused nowadays on morning routines, daily routines. There can be a trap in having too much in that routine that makes it nearly a weight or really difficult. So then it goes from serving you and making you feel better to actually becoming another job that you have to then complete every single day. So it's what we say all the time. It's a little bit of balance, and then awareness. Like what you spoke about was so on point, is just be aware of it. Be aware of what's serving you as much as you can. Catch yourself. Like, the winner's in catching yourself, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like even in a lot of spiritual teachings, they always speak about it. They're like, look, we don't expect you to meditate and be zen all day. But the key is actually knowing that when you do let your mind run wild, if you can pick up on that and know that your mind's running wild, and then you can correct it even for 5 seconds, that's such a win. Like, that's genuine mindfulness. And I think there's something cool.
Yeah.
So going back to screen time.
Well, what you said, I just remembered something from the book as well. That the author Greg McKeown, he said that the best way to become really clear on what's essential, one of the things you should do is actually journal. He mentioned write for 90 days, but just when you start, don't feel like you have to write a whole page. Just write a sentence, and write just enough, and then stop before you feel like you don't want to write anymore. Don't write until you're satisfied. Write until you actually want to write more, but then stop. Just stop kind of shy of that. So that was a really cool tip from him as well. And I know you're someone who journals, and that's how you gain clarity on what's important to you in your life, is you actually have to work at it. And I thought that was a really good point.
I think journaling, it's such an effective way to empty that monkey mind. Like, sometimes you get in those mental loops. Like, I don't know, I don't know if you find this, but I'd sometimes find myself where there's like 2 or 3 things just running through your head all day, but you're not actioning it. You're just thinking about it. You're trying to figure it out. Like, it's like that dialogue where you just have that continuous conversation with yourself. And I remember, like, that annoys me so much. That's one of my pet hates, is when that's running through my mind. And I know that I'm then not present. I'm not really enjoying any other aspects. I'm just in this loop. And I think out of nearly everything that I've tried, journaling is the best way of just emptying that out. Like, the simple act of writing down what's going through your head. And then even then, as you write, sometimes you'll solve the problem, because when I'm writing it, it looks stupid when you just write what's been going through your head. I'll then nearly have to finish it off with some type of action, because now you've got the clarity. Whereas yeah, you can nearly imprison yourself with some of those mental loops sometimes. And, and we've had funny examples that we've shared, right? Where we've had a meeting go pear-shaped, or we've had a deal sort of not play out how we wanted it to play out. And then it's just running through your mind. So either talking about it, having a chat to a friend, maybe journaling, such an effective way of getting it out of your head onto a piece of paper or out into the world a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, journaling's cool. And just from a practical point of view with the journaling practice, one that I use just to share it is I'll just have a notebook. It's like a moleskin notepad. I think there's a real important piece with writing, emptying your brain through your hand and handwriting it out. That's just something that I've found personally. And what I'll do is I'll just write the date. I'll generally write where I am, and I'll usually start with the sentence, and it's just a line saying empty the cup. And to me, that's a trigger that now says just release everything that's running through the head. And then it's nearly a free form style of writing. We then just empty out thoughts. Sometimes it's half a page, sometimes it's a page. And then to me, once it's cleared out, or it feels like, all right, I've now, I don't have too many more active ideas or thoughts running through my mind. They're all pretty much on the paper. Then I'll then try to maybe write 2 or 3 things that I'm grateful for, some sort of gratitude type of exercise if my mind's really active, because it just sort of puts you into that appreciation type of mindset as well, instead of being externally focused on something that's not happening. It brings you more into the present. And then I'll try to finish it maybe with a couple of actions, or I'll say, all right, it's 11 a.m. What does the next 2 hours look like? And then it starts making it a little bit more proactive. So you can nearly turn that into an essentialism type of exercise as well.
Wow, I really like that. You've been telling me about journaling for years and I haven't really been doing it. So I literally just added it to my essential list to see if I can kickstart something in that realm, because I think you're right. I often leave my journaling, if you would, to conversations.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm talking about things, and then through the exploration conversation, that's when I start to go, oh, yeah. That's why I realize a lot of things on the call with you, and when we're even doing a podcast. And it just made me think of something, right? It made me think of the whole quote we use, make sure you're going to fall off the bandwagon, but get back on the bandwagon. To me, I think life is about getting on and off the bandwagon. It's not just about staying on the bandwagon. Imagine like that train we were talking about. Imagine staying on the train for the rest of your life. That's going to suck, man. So for me, I think we just have to learn to not be as harsh when we do fall off the bandwagon or get off the train. Just be kinder to yourself, and just understand that, well, look, yeah, just get back on tomorrow. It's all good. I think there's so much kind of negative thinking around once you've fallen off a routine that you've failed, that you're not as good, or now you're just destined to never be able to achieve the thing you're after. It's kind of we place such high levels of importance of always being on the bandwagon, which I don't think is necessary.
Yep. It just reminded me of a funny story as well. Like as you were saying that, I remember there was a time where I really wanted to do a streak of 1 year of meditating every single day. And I would log it in the Calm app. So that's an app that's available where you can meditate. And then some days where I didn't do it, I'd like look at it and I'd do like a manual entry, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I breathe it in and out like 5 times. So that counts as 1 minute of meditation. And then that would get the streak happening. And then I was like looking back on it, I'm like, this is so stupid that it's so important to get that streak going that I'm now nearly like lying to the streak just to make sure that it's there. And I still don't know, like, was it better that I did that because it overall made me stick with it more, or should I have just been more accepting of the days when it didn't happen? Like, these are the tricky bits, and we're all so unique and different in how we approach it.
I think it's better just to be truthful and realize that,
for sure,
again, we're all human. We're gonna fall off the routine. We're gonna fall out of it.
That is the logical and sensible and correct response, but it didn't play out like that.
Well, Well, I think the moment you accept that, you kind of move through life with a little more ease.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And you hate yourself a little bit less, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's like so much of the themes that we're speaking about here is it's around being kinder to ourselves when, yeah, we do or don't do things. I think that's such a, and it's been a theme in a lot of our episodes lately is around playfulness, fluidity, a bit more flow. I think that
I feel like we can't escape. I feel like we can't escape play because play was a huge component of this book as well, right? I mean, first of all, the book kind of talks about, well, how do you explore and identify what's essential for you? And for you to be able to identify and explore that, well, you need to try lots of different things. You also need to learn how to, identify by, like one of the methods you said is keep a journal. The book also said, building knowledge helps us as well. So as you read books on essentialism, as you start to read books on the area of your expertise or the area that you're interested in, as you learn from other thought leaders, you may also get hints on what's essential and what's not. And I think a lot of that self-work allows you to identify what is essential, but then you have to try it as well. I think you've just got to try it. And then the book also talks about, well, there are some tools to help you sharpen your ability to identify what's essential and what's not. And one of them is play. So I was like, well, we can't escape this whole play thing.
Yeah.
Because it's back again.
Before we go to play, one of the things that you said was like learning and growth as well. What's something that you've done recently that you were curious about or that you started learning about where you really had to go in with beginner's mind? So it wasn't something really in your wheelhouse. It was outside the comfort zone.
Yeah. I've been reading the book Sapiens. And that was a really cool book because I wanted to read something that wasn't personal development. I wanted to read something kind of outside the norm of what I normally read. And what I really loved about that book was that it reminded me the importance of reading things that are new and foreign to you. Because while I was reading that book, one of the things the author said was that, the whole idea behind the mythical gods back in the day and how shamans used to chant things and then people would believe that when he chanted this particular thing, it would eradicate evil spirits. And then the author said, that's not too different from the modern day stories and chants that lawyers chant on paper. And then all of a sudden now you believe this to be true, or this company now exists after I did the ritual of writing these documents. Now there's a separate entity. And then while I was reading that, I was like, holy, yeah, it's a real thing. And then I went, wow, I never saw it from that perspective that, because I used to look at the shamans back in there and go, that's so stupid. What are you talking about? There's no such thing as a curse. And then when the author made that connection to the modern day chants that we chant, and then all of a sudden now a PTY LTD exists or an LLC exists, I kind of went, that's kind of really interesting. And it tickled a part of my brain that has not been tickled in a very long time. Right? Because like you said, a lot of the times once you start reading a lot of books in one given area, you kind of go, oh yeah, I've heard this before in this book. I've heard this before in that book. But that, like, I'm learning so many new things about the human species. And in learning that new thing, it made me realize it's actually important to read things that are completely out of your comfort zone and to read things that you normally wouldn't read.
So cool. We're going to have to do that book, I think, as an episode.
Absolutely. That is a fantastic book.
Such a great book.
Well, it's cool. The origin, like we always want to know more about our grandparents and more about our family. But dude, to know more about our race is fascinating.
Yep. Have you watched the Cosmos documentary series?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
That to me was one of those things where when I first saw that just blew my mind.
That's essential. That's essential for everyone to watch.
It's so entertaining too. And then just because what you're talking about here is like really understanding, not just who we are on like a social level. Like it's literally the real origin of us from going back 14 billion years, to when call it the Big Bang happens. And yeah, it's, as you were saying that, one of the things that I started studying recently was I just got really curious about physics, and science and maths and stuff like that isn't an area of strength for me. And it was off the back of reading books like of people like Richard Feynman and Albert Einstein, and, you know, probably even watching Cosmos a few years ago. And I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I'd love to understand these concepts a little bit more. So I went and then downloaded a Coursera online course in physics, started that, realized I'd enrolled into one that was way too difficult. This is the equivalent of someone that's maybe been doing this for like 5-10 years. Like, by the end of week one, there was all these 20 digit mathematical equations that you had to figure out.
Just listening to this.
I felt ill because of how stupid I felt. Like, the realization of how little I knew about a subject area was sickening. It was
demoralizing.
So gross. It was less than 5. Like, I could only comprehend maybe less than 5% of the English words that were on this course. So then I found a much easier version of this that was super playful. It was, I think, maybe through the University of Virginia, and it's awesome. Like, we ended up, I even did some of the experiments with tricks with the kids, where we got like a glass of water sitting on a piece of paper and then pulled out the piece of paper really quickly to teach them about inertia. And I'm like, this is cool now, because now it's getting taught in a practical way that I could comprehend and understand a little bit more. But even just things like that, like, it's so amazing when you learn things about things that you didn't know existed before. Like, just little things, like the reason of why when we push our hands together, our hands don't go through each other. Like, that there's, you know, there's concepts behind physics that don't allow, you know, there's these rules of nature that allow things to happen and don't happen. And it's so cool. Like, the same thing with Sapiens. Like, I love that that idea of learning things that are really new to us and going in with the beginner's mind, because it can get so easy to just do things that we're comfortable with.
Well, because you only know what you know. And when you learn new things, it helps shape and color in the world in a different way. Like, for example, again, like what you said, for me, as I'm reading Sapiens, I'm starting to realize that, you know, some of the essential clues that all human beings need are in this book. It talks about the importance of human connection and how we're a species. We're a social species. You know, if you put the reason why we care so much about what the other person thinks is because we're a social species. We need each other to survive. We need community. We need connection. And it's why it's so easy to understand why some people are so depressed, because they're so isolated from people, from deep levels of connection. So again, I think it's so important. And I'm so glad that Greg kind of pointed it out in this book, that we need to build on our knowledge and understand where the gaps are in our knowledge. Because for you to live a life that is essential to you, that has all the wonderful essential things to you, you're not going to be able to live that beautiful and essential life knowing only what you know right now. There are gaps in your knowledge right now, and you have to kind of bridge those gaps before you can live that life. And it's kind of, you know, to me, it makes life exciting, because it means that the purpose of life is that it is a puzzle that you have to solve. And then the journey through this life is about solving that puzzle. And just one quick thing to the other point before, you know, we move on to the next topic of play, is that I think another way to not beat yourself up when you fall off the routine, or, you know, we keep using the word bandwagon. I feel like it's excessive now. But another way is don't take life too seriously. I just stop taking it all too seriously. I think if you take it too seriously and you try to take it too seriously, that's when you start to punch yourself in the guts and you start to be really mean to yourself. Don't take it too seriously.
Yep. And one of the things that was sticking in my mind was when you were saying that, and you always talk about this, which I love. It's the idea of upgrading your operating system.
Yeah.
This is one of the coolest things that I think I've personally learned from you. Like, when you mentioned this 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember us having a laugh about how some people are still, you know, at times
using DOS.
Yeah, we're on DOS. Like, there's certain aspects that, like, I think the way that I manage how I pack away my clothes is still a very DOS level operating system. But then it's looking, and even things like going on news sites, like that simple trigger point, and I've used it so many times. If I'm doing something, I'm like, is this upgrading my operating system or is it not?
Yeah. Well,
is it something
it's like
that's nourishing?
it's like when you eat a whole bowl of food that is all processed food,
Yep.
right? How do you feel after that? You feel gross. What we've got to understand is that information, there's a lot of processed information out there that's really bad for you. And it's designed to be really exciting, just like how certain foods are designed to be very exciting for your taste buds, but man, it's terrible for you. You've got to be so careful of so careful of the processed information junk that's out there. Yeah. And again, I love the operating system because look, if you're listening to this podcast, I think you can appreciate us being very transparent with you in that there are times in your life that you've communicated with someone and you've spoken to someone and you're like, wow, that person's not running the same operating system I am. And sometimes you know that person's running a very outdated operating system. And even, I bet you there are people that talk to us and listen to this podcast and go, man, those guys are on Windows 95, right? Yep. And that's fine. But I think the point of what we're saying is that make sure you don't get stuck in an old operating system and that you're not working towards improving that operating system. And the way you improve it is through the information that you absorb, through the books that you read, through the courses that you take, through the education that you have.
Love it.
So now let's move to how do we sharpen this tool to be able to make better choices and to say no when we need to. And the book talks about there are two things that you can do to sharpen the tool. One is play and the other is sleep.
What a cool way to live life. Just sleeping and playing. Like,
that's children. Kids do. That's kids. Yeah. That's what kids do. Yeah, that's what my son does.
So yeah, there is so many secrets to life, I think, in the way that kids go about it.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. It's so funny, right? I remember reading this passage on social media once where the book says, no, not the book, the post wrote that it was from Lex Friedman. He's like a AI expert, and he had this little post where he said, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's something along the lines of, I teach the youth the importance of mastery, and then I teach those who have mastered things the simplicity of the basics.
Yeah.
So it's like as people just start out, you got to master something, but then when you master something, you got to remember it's about the simplicity again. It's about the basics again. So it's kind of like that loop that it was a very high level coach that he was interviewing was saying. Is that I teach those who are new the importance of mastering something, getting really good at it, and then I teach those who are already really good at it the importance of the basics and the foundations again.
That's so good. It reminds me of this thing that John Wooden, who's a really famous basketball coach, and
yeah, I reference him a lot.
One of his things that he used to do with his 16-time championship team is that they would first practice how they tied up their shoelaces, and that was one of the core skills that they had to learn. Because it was something so simple, but something that a lot of people don't really put in much effort. And the whole concept was, well, look, if you start with the basics, like getting your shoelaces tied properly, and you hone that in as a skill, and you start then building the fundamentals. Because the whole idea was, if we get the fundamentals right, we follow our system, we'll be unbeatable. Because everyone will be aligned in the same sort of direction, And
I guess what we're saying here is that there are two fundamentals here that are very important, and it's sleep and play. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Ooh, let's start with play.
Well, I mean, I know we've talked about this a lot in our podcasts, but, the way the author defined play in his book was he said it's simply for the joy of doing. And if you kind of use that definition of play, when do you do things for the joy of doing? That's Lego for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer in looking at life like it's a game.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm nearly at my happiest when I'm viewing most things in life from that viewpoint. because it just removes, call it a lot of like the ego attachment, or, you know, when you start, like, to me, attachment's a really big thing. Like, I find that I personally make poorer decisions when I'm really attached to something, right? So say if I'm identifying too much as a CEO, or whether it's identifying too much as a husband or a parent and then personalizing it, I find that I make poorer choices when I feel like there's something to lose. You know, when you get that vibe of, oh, if I make this decision, and deep down when you really explore it, it's like, oh, well, if I make that decision and it fails, everyone will think that I'm a really average CEO or whatever it is. You know, and they're silly thoughts when you start verbalizing them, but it's something that's really true for all of us, right? Like, we have these things that we do and don't do because of how it's going to reflect on our self-image. And to me, the way that I can overcome that is when I just start thinking of me being a character in a game, and that all of these different things are games. So it doesn't really matter. And then I could start getting a little bit more playful with it. So I just wanted to share that, like, top level. If there are things in your life that you're taking way too seriously, or that are causing you mental loops and internal pain, that can be a little bit of a hack to just detach yourself a little bit from some of the aspects of whatever it is that you're involved with. And you can nearly look at anything, I believe, as a game, and you can really treat it like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you say that. Yeah.
It's friendships. It can be your business. It can be your work. You could gamify so much of what's happening in your life.
Why do you think that happens when you think of yourself as being in a game? Why do you think that actually happens like that?
Because you depersonalize it. You know, like, there's so much. There's so much, I think, to do with our egos and the way, and our identity, right? Like, when you think about you and me as, like, what is a Vinh and an Ali Tarai? You know, we're ultimately a story as well that's been built up through our beliefs and the actions that we take and how we view ourselves, how people view us.
Past experiences.
Right? Past experiences, the roles that we play. You know, like I'm not my LinkedIn profile or whatever it says on that. That's not what I really am. You know, that's just that's a story that we present. We're not our websites or our about us, our Instagram profiles. You know, they're just a reflection of how we present ourselves.
Want the world to see us. Yeah.
Yeah, or like what we want the world to see us, right? And it's still a part of it, but to me, that's still also, like, how much easier is it when you don't identify yourself as that person? Like, say, like, if you start looking at it like I'm playing the game of Instagram, it's a lot better than, oh, geez, I need to be worried about what I post on my profile because of what people will think. It's like, no, I'm just playing the game of Instagram. I've got to post like once a month or whatever it is.
Are you a gamer? Are you even a gamer though?
Not as much nowadays. I used to be.
Yeah.
Like, growing up, video games were a huge part of my life, but nowadays, I think I've stopped playing pre-created games because I like creating my own games, which is
playing the game of life.
Yeah. So the video game that I play now is probably Asana, and having
God, it sounds like a terrible game.
Yeah, my task list is my video game. Or like
game. Jeez.
Yeah.
If you said that to a gamer, I would slap you in the face. No,
it's an open world multiplayer online video game.
It's 2D. It's a 2D game with just text and numbers and lines. Freaking awful. And there's a calendar in it. Gross.
I disagree. I think it's the most real virtual reality game that there is, because all of those things then end up being real life actions.
Well, the easiest way to think of life as a game is to truly just adopt the mentality that this is a simulation.
That's the next level.
If you just adopt the mindset that this is all just a bloody simulation anyway, and you're somewhere else, you know, just like a big sack of meat just in a little tube, and you've got a VR headset on and you're just playing the VR life of Ali.
That's just a little bit too far for me at the moment. I'm not there yet. I'm not at the simulation point.
The reason why I kind of reject that whole Asana game so much, just from a, you know, imaginary kind of point of view, is because I'm actually a gamer. I love playing games. And when you say, treat life as a game, I just reflected, and maybe if there are any gamers that listen to this, just reflect on how you play games and contrast that with how you play life. And notice the differences, because when I play games, there's a game I play called League of Legends back in the day. And when I play that game, I always pick the sneakiest characters, the most annoying characters you could find. Like there's a character I play called Timo, and he puts invisible bombs around the map. And people hate the character when I play it, because I would leave these little invisible bombs all over the map. And I know the routes people take to go back home to heal. So I'd place the bombs exactly the routes I'd take home. So on the way home to go heal, they'd die. So I'm just thinking about myself. I'm going, man, what the hell does that say about me? And when I play kind of first person shooters, I take so many risks to do. I usually play a game called PUBG, and I always let my team down because I'll Rambo everything. I'm like, there's a squad of 4. I'm like, don't worry, guys, I've got this. And I run in and just get shot and killed. And then my mates will come save me and then die as a result as well. I just wonder if there's parallels. If there are, if you are a gamer, is it wise to look into the way you play games and go, how can I replicate that in my everyday life?
Well, I remember when World of Warcraft started back in the day.
I'm pretty sure
there were companies that were hiring the top players because they were showing leadership skills and how to complete tasks.
I don't know, because I felt like the top players were just potatoes and didn't move much.
But you've got to think about it, right? Like everything is designed kind of like a game. Like think about climbing up the corporate ladder. That is just another version of a real life video game. Where you have to apply and you have to put in a resume, then you have to present yourself, then you have to go and do certain tasks, and then if you do those tasks well enough and you make friends and build an alliance, then you might get promoted, then you'll get more tokens that you can then spend on things.
Do some quests, help out a friend.
Do some quests, finish some
side
assignments. Quests. Right? Like all of it's a game. Like uni's designed as a game. Like the reason why it gets people engaged for 3 years is that they go there and you learn about a subject, you collect the knowledge, then you do the exam, then you get a score. If you get the score, you get to pass the level, you get into the next version of the subject. Like, So if you look at a larger majority of the things that we're engaged with, there's some type of game. Like even being a parent to an extent, you can treat it like a game. Like you have to conceive them and go through that process, and then they're born.
Wonderful game.
There's then there's the baby level. There's collecting all the
terrible
little tools
game
for
terrible game.
Trying to manage sleep so your meter doesn't completely deplete, so you can play again the next day.
Or more health.
Your health, keeping them alive. Why do you think Tamagotchis were so popular? This is like low stakes. Parenting, or like the game The Sims was so popular. That was literally like living life.
It's living life.
And it became the number 1 game for it.
That's hilarious.
Right? So then we go back to it. It's like, then why do we take our lives so seriously, but we don't then play around too much? And maybe you're right. Like you're talking about extreme examples there, right? Like, you can't like some of the actions that you're doing there, you can't really do in real life, but maybe there's something there where you can, like, I don't know, implement more of that mischievousness into normal life as well. You're right, like, because that's probably the need. It's the same thing as why do we watch
it's true.
Movies. And why do we resonate with certain characters? Like, why do we like crime shows? Because there's a deeper side of us that wants us to imagine what it'd be like to live that life, even though we're not necessarily going to do it ourselves. We still know that it's something that can be part of the human experience. I can tell you right now an example of what brings me immense joy. That's mischievous. Right now, I could bang on. When you said it, I was like, yes, you are right. Because, so my cousin Fung, and you know her quite well. Yeah. My cousin Fung, she has a terrible fear of birds. Like, she just so scared of birds. So many jokes on her, don't you?
Oh, dude, you have no idea. So one of the things I love doing the most, because she's like my little sister pretty much in my life, is I sneak up behind her when she doesn't know I'm there. And I go really close to her ear and I go, like as if it's the sound of a bird. And she jumps and she screams and I get so much joy. Like if I ever feel sad, I just need to locate where my cousin is and do that to her, and I'm happy again.
And I saw this fear live. We went to the zoo together.
Oh, yeah.
And I could just see her, just avoiding you when we got close to the aviary or whatever it was that we had to walk through. And then B, shout out to Marcel, my little boy, got Fung to then walk through the entire bird sanctuary aviary area there. And it was no help to you because you were just executed years and years of these jokes on your poor cousin.
I really do. And I just think I'm a better person for it. So look, I feel like 100%. I feel like the way we connect this whole concept to this book is that by looking at life as a game, it helps you play more.
Mm-hmm.
It really does.
Sure.
I think that it just, like you said, it depersonalizes it. It helps you take it a little bit less seriously. You know, while we say all of this, please understand that, you know, if you die in this reality, as far as we know it, you're dead. So let's be reasonable with how far we push it. It's not like, you know, I'm gonna just pick on someone who's 10 times bigger than me and punch them in the face and realize that there's no lives that come after this one.
Like,
as far as we know, because there could be.
I love how you're putting a disclaimer on as far as we know. Pretty sure at the moment you've got one conventional life. Call it.
Well, no, I'm just saying because in PUBG I can jump off a 3-story building and only lose half health. Pretty sure you lose all your health in this reality. So there are barriers.
Yep. Use common sense, definitely.
And I mean,
but I think the real practical takeaway from this is what's something that you're taking a little bit too seriously at the moment that you could add a little bit more play towards.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a really cool reflection question. Like, is there anything in your life at the moment that you're taking a bit too seriously that you think you could play around with?
I think I was taking exercise too seriously before. Like I was thinking exercise had to be a time where I'm just punishing myself, you know, that I'm sweating and that I'm hating it. Like I just kind of in my mind had this belief that that's what exercise had to be, that it couldn't be enjoyable. Whereas now I kind of said, well, look, why don't I just enjoy it? Why don't I watch something, work hard at the same time, you know, still work up a good sweat and enjoy it more.
That's a cool
so that was a wicked hack. And to me, like other things, like again, washing the dishes, that was I have to wash the dishes. And I just begrudgingly doing it while inside just going, why do I have to do this? Why can't we just hire someone to do this? And I kind of realized, well, I can make it enjoyable. I can.
Yep. That's such a good one.
Yeah.
Yep. I like it.
So look, I think we all understand the benefits of play. I mean, obviously it helps improve brain plasticity. It helps you become more adaptive. It helps you be more creative. It actually reduces stress. I can tell you now again, after reading this book and just us bringing up the point of play so many times, I caught up a archery range and I'm going to go do a little archery this weekend.
Cool. So cool.
Yeah, dude, I've been talking about this for the last 3 years and I haven't done it because I've kept using the excuse of I don't have enough time. And to me, I say I don't have enough time because I say I don't have enough time for things that are silly. I don't have enough time for play. I used to think that. I used to think of things like this as being a waste of time. Whereas I think after the last 3 or 4 podcasts we've done, I've now completely changed the way I view play.
I love that.
And I see play as being something that's essential now as opposed to, oh, I don't have time for play. That's stupid. I think, no, I need to make time for play. This is so important in my life. So that's a huge gift for me.
As you were saying that, just another really cool, like practical sort of application of that came to mind was what's something that you're catching yourself saying that you don't have time for?
That's a good one. Yep.
And then scheduling that in the next week or 2 or next month if you can. Like, I think that's a really cool sort of challenge.
Yeah. Every time it comes up, note it down. Create a note in your phone. And every time you catch yourself even thinking that, write down what that thing is.
Yeah, that's cool. I like
that. Yeah. So for me, man, I finally now, after number of podcasts with you, I'm now prioritizing this as something that's very important in my life. alongside, self-care and sleep and nutrition and everything, like that's now become a category of itself. And I kind of track that. I'm going to start tracking that as of this month now when I schedule things with my wife. When am I scheduling in my own time to play?
The other one for me is laughing and just trying to integrate way more laughter. Like I think about when you, me and Craig hang out. Like that is it's just laughing for like 8 to 10 hours. And it's dude. Therapeutic and energizing. I know,
but it's also hard, right? It's hard to find. I was literally about to say it's hard to find time to do that. Damn.
It's hard to find time. And that's hilarious, right? But every year when we
write
catch
that down.
up, we might catch up, once, twice a year, the three of us when we can. And it's just such a highlight. But you're right, like just scheduling those, because I think most people will have a little dynamic in their life that generates laughter. Like you'll have a friend or a TV show or something that just gets you laughing. Like to me, days are just so much better.
A comedy show, man. Comedy show.
Comedy shows.
I went to watch one in Melbourne and with my family. This was just a few months ago. Dude, for a whole hour and a half, I was laughing, man.
Yep. Like, it was amazing. I remember, even with work, like we use an app called Slack, which is pretty popular. And I just remember the best days, even when we were working remotely, was just when we would get in a role in a Slack channel and there would just be jokes being shot around and just laughter and just incorporating that into even work is so important, I think, especially if you're spending a fair bit of time.
I feel like that's such a powerful reminder that you have to keep at the forefront of your mind every day. Just have fun, don't take things too seriously, and laugh a little.
Yeah, so cool.
I feel like I need to, just laugh a little.
Just laugh.
Gotta say a little bit in a Chav accent. Just have a little bit of fun.
A little bit of fun.
Just a little bit of fun. Yeah.
Well, we reflect on it when we do the pod, right? Sometimes we get a bit deep and we get serious, and then we're like, but then we're like, we should have played a little bit more with that bit, or we should have laughed a little bit more. And it's so cool. Like you haven't done your dad's accent in ages, and that's really annoying Chantal.
Gosh.
She's like, every episode. This is what I'm waiting for the whole time.
Oh gosh. Maybe that's why our numbers are down and no one's listening.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's her 2 hours for every episode just gone. Because of you. I'll find a spot in this podcast before it ends to plug it in, but I won't bring it in when I'm asked to. I've got to keep it spontaneous. Do you ever get in trouble from Paywen for certain things that I say or you say? Like, I'll share an example. When we did the parenting episode, like I got a text message from Chantal saying, Vin just gets it. Like Vin just gets it. And I'm like, what?
I've never gotten that from my wife. I've never gotten that from Paywen.
Oh, and I was like, I think you should listen to this episode. Like, it's pretty cool. Like, we were talking about something that we really had no idea about, trying to be a little bit vulnerable about parenting and stuff like that. And I did something wrong that day, my man. Like, that was...
What did you do wrong?
I don't know. Life. I did life wrong that day. Then I'm like, all right, well... I'll definitely say, more stuff next time around.
Well, to answer your question, I haven't had my wife tell me off for anything I've said on the podcast so far. Probably because she rather watch crime shows than listen to our podcast. I think that's just the honest truth of the matter. So
that's fair. That's fair.
At least your wife is interested in the podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, well, then tell her if she's listening to write a bloody review on Apple Podcasts for us, because I don't think we have any at the moment. So I'm waiting really for a review from you, Chantal. I'm just saying, calling out one of our listeners out of the 12, write a review. Come on. If you're enjoying it, write a review, Chantal.
I'm pretty sure she's logged in with my Apple ID as well, so it'll be a review.
Come up with Ali. But at least write your name in the review. So,
it'll be like, decent podcast, really like Vin, not sure about
Ali
the Ali.
And then people just go, Ali bloody hates himself.
Yeah. 3 stars. Shows promise, but could be improved.
Find better co-host. Ali's
so
right.
good. So good.
Well, look, to bring it back a little on play and sleep, I strongly suggest that people take this really seriously in terms of create a category for yourself if you can, whether you just give yourself an outlet where you get to play for 30 minutes a day, whatever that may mean for you, an hour or two a week. I mean, one of my best friends, Lenny, he loves basketball. And I can tell you now that the weeks where he gets to play basketball once versus the sometimes months that go on where he doesn't get to play, he's a different person when he plays. When he comes and hangs out with us on a week that he has played basketball, he's a completely different person. He's more fun, he's more funny, he's less stressed. And then I compare that with the weeks where he isn't able to go. He's a different person. He's more stressed. He's more kind of caught up in some of the problems that are going on in the business. And it's a different person. It's a different person. So to me, I think that we need to start looking at play as a form of nutrition, except it's a form of nutrition for our brain.
It's pretty cool. I was just thinking about to-do lists, and this is something I'm going to do after this episode, is just look back over, say, my Asana or whatever the to-do list is that I use, and just be like, well, how many of the items have the word play in them? And then try to increase the percentage of those with play. Because you're right. It's a tool to sharpen the saw. Like that example that you used, like what Lenny's experiencing, what we experience, like as if your week can't be better if you're playing. Like even if you're approaching work with a playful mindset, pretty sure the work's going to be better. It's going to be more creative. You're probably going to be more engaged with it. Like if you're coming in from that mindset of play rather than mindset of obligation or stress or weight or pressure. Sometimes pressure can be positive, but if it's too much, it can get a little bit too much.
Yeah. So I love that idea. Start to reflect on how often you're playing and how you can increase that. And for me, when I started to seriously consider this, when this book brought it up again, and I was like, oh my goodness, how many books have to tell me I need to play? Yeah. That's when I said, all right, I'm gonna schedule something in. Like, look, I appreciate golf, and when you took me on it, it was fun, but I don't know if I particularly enjoy that as much when I'm playing by myself. Whereas a game that I enjoy playing on my own is archery. Like I love that. So I can't wait to go this weekend and have a play. So hopefully that encourages other people to play.
For sure. It's finding what it is, right? And even just nostalgia. Like I've really gotten into Lego recently over the last year, and that's been sort of my pandemic new hobby, and probably bought too much Lego. There's an argument to be said for that.
I really think you have. How much money? How much money have you spent on Lego?
We don't need
full transparency. No, full transparency. Yes, we do. I want to know, how much money have you spent on Lego?
I won't say the number, but say if I had
just tell me the number.
Income, if I had a pool of disposable income over the last 12 months, like I would say that Lego would be a pretty significant asset class in my portfolio.
Oh, look at you dodge the question. Look at you dodge the question. Give me a range. Well, give me a percent. So 100% of your income, what percentage of your income have you spent on Lego?
Too much.
Give me a percent. Come on. Come on. What percent? What percent?
I'm not going to figures, but I will say that.
Wow, look at you being so like scared
I don't know.
of what people are going to think.
That I literally don't know, but I'll tell you how many sets I've bought.
Okay.
So I think I've bought about 25 Lego sets.
I reckon, I'm going to throw a number out there. I reckon you spent more than $10,000, about $12,000 worth of Lego.
I'd say it'd be around the mark.
Oh my God. Wow. Wow, that's crazy. You're an idiot.
sweating now.
But a smart idiot who's playing. That's great,
Yeah,
man. That's awesome. Dude,
then even
I
then,
would.
On the flip side, this is my reasoning behind it too.
I love that you're sweating.
Right. All right. Yeah, I'm sweating a little bit just because now Chantal's going to be like, I knew it was a high number, but that's ridiculous. But here's my justification.
Okay.
For it. It's something pretty proactive, right? And it did start as something. So I always think about when we invest in things. So it's easy to look at this Lego investment and then be like, this is ridiculous, right? There's definitely an argument for that to be said. But then on the flip side, I've then got to think about all the boxes that it ticks, right? I'm going to do my best to justify this. So, for example, there's been sets of Lego that have then been built with the kids. So that's been connection, right? That's a pretty big one. The kids are now over it. They've had enough of the Lego, so they'll play with the sets after they're built. That's one bit. The other part is I love it. Like, one of the things that I'd look forward to the most is after everyone's now in bed, I will go and build Lego for about an hour and a half. And that's just like mindful time. You know, I'll generally listen to an audio book as well while I'm doing it because there's instructions there, so I can sort of turn off a little bit. I'll listen to an audio book. A lot of the times it'll be like a fictional story as well. So I'm getting some reading done. I'm building Lego, and it's an awesome way just to get into the mindset of completion as well. So again, thinking back to the video game analogy, Lego to me is a little bit like a video game because you start off, it's usually, I'm buying pretty big sets. They're like 5,000-6,000 piece sets. If you're not in the zone, it can feel kind of overwhelming, right? It's like, oh wow, this is going to be like a 20-hour build or whatever it is. But if you're in the zone, it's this beautiful thing of just watching progress and completion. Like every time a little bag's finished, like gets packed away, start on the next bag. I think it's pretty good for my brain in terms of just focus and locking in and doing something consistently as well. So that's
I reckon it's a form of meditation. I reckon it's a form of
100%.
meditation for you.
100%. It's like mindfulness.
Well,
really
because
meditative.
you're getting out of your head and getting into your fingers, right?
See it, right? And even then I'll look back, like one of the things that, you know, when we've been talking about play, like I look back over it in the years, and it's an exercise that we've done, is I always try to think back to things that we loved when we were kids. And funnily enough, a lot of those things are still really fun when you're an adult. So Lego was one of the things that I loved since I was like 2 years old. Like I've still got boxes of Lego sitting in the garage from when I was a kid. So it's so amazing that now with Lego, they've got like adult based Lego pretty much.
Yeah,
you
wow.
build these crazy creations. And then it's cool. Like you get to display them, you get to play with them. Like, so it's ticking a fair few boxes. And I also think that there's a chance that they'll hold their value as well. So it might become a cool little heirloom or investment as well. Down the track, because Lego sets get retired.
I don't know.
And then once they're retired, they go up in value.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know they get retired.
They get retired. So a Lego set might only be available for like 2 or 3 years.
That's kind of like my wife telling me how some of the handbags that she buys is an investment.
Absolutely. It's an investment.
And I'm like, I don't know. She was like, no, it's true. It's true. When you buy it and then they discontinue, it goes up in price. But I'm like, but you never sell any of them. So how is that an investment? So,
and the other way that I offset it is usually I'd have a budget allocated to say travel. Like I'd go on a couple of holidays, whatever, no pandemic. So then that budget is then reallocated.
Hey, everyone's got their different vices, right? Yours is Lego and you enjoy it. And Lego. It sounds like it brings you so many forms of, forms of pleasure. That's fantastic.
And I think just macro as well is there's so many things that, like I was thinking about it more and more when we were discussing this. This is such a cool sort of example. Is at the start, I was nearly embarrassed about the Lego, right? Which there's an argument there, especially when you have to store it. And then Chantal's like, well, we're going to keep storing all of these pieces of Lego all around the house, right? There's that side. And these big boxes get delivered every now and again. It's like a Lego set. So there's an argument of it being silly. But I think there's also the flip side to it, right? If you have 2 or 3 things that you're really into and you're able to allocate a percentage of your resources to something that ticks 4 or 5 different boxes, like why not do it? whether it's basketball cards or it's Lego or it's video games or it's buying a set of golf clubs. Like everyone will have their own 2 or 3. And for most people, it's not going to be ridiculous. It might just be one thing or 2 things, but go all in on it if you can.
Well, I'll tell you this, right?
Do it to a ridiculous level.
Well, I mean,
if you really love it.
Well, look at this. People spend 20 grand on a gym set that's going to be epic for their home. People will spend $2,000 on a gym membership. People will spend thousands of dollars on nutrition and getting the right vitamins, looking after their health. If you're truly looking at play as a form of nutrition, that's fine. Like as long as it ticks all those boxes for you, right? I think, because
I spend zero on all of the other things that you just mentioned.
Then Chantel, you have no case. Then this is done. This is like, if I had something to hit, I would hit it and go, order, case closed. We're done.
I've got my arms for some push-ups and a kettlebell.
And Tim Tams that you always get on half price. They're always on half price. Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. And dude, so to me, I think if we're looking at play as something that is as serious as we are saying it is, then it's okay to invest some serious resources to it, right? I mean, look, if people spend $5,000, $12,000 on a family trip, when you go on a big holiday, sometimes it can cost you up to 10 grand, right?
Sure.
So all of a sudden, I mean, flights alone, a family of 4 or 5, man, you're talking 10 grand already. So what we're saying here is, as we start to look at play as being something that is this serious, then you're just putting your money where your mouth is. You're actually starting to take it really, really seriously.
Taking play very seriously. Box.
Well, Lego
box
very
ticked.
seriously.
Box is ticked.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I can tell you this as well. Like for me, to talk about sleep as well, I take sleep super seriously now too, dude.
Yep.
I had a couple of late nights where I stayed up to 11, and I noticed how it impacted me during the day. And I just said to, I remember last night, Payman was like, hey, we should watch this, we're watching this Netflix show called Kim's Convenience, and it's bloody hilarious. And
I've been watching Schitt's Creek. Have you watched Schitt's Creek?
Oh, no, I haven't, but I heard that's another good one to get on.
So good.
But Payman's like, let's binge, 5 or 6 episodes. I was like, nah, we'll do 2, and then I'm going to bed. And to me, I'm just starting to realize how seriously I'm taking sleep now as well as play. And I think the shift of taking those 2 things seriously has been amazing.
Love it. So cool.
There's
a great book called Why We Sleep. Have you seen that?
I have it on my bookshelf. Have not read it.
Awesome. Maybe
it's a book we can do next. Yeah,
it's another really good one if sleep's a thing, because I think it just confirms how important sleep is. So I think I love that. I love those 2 things that you're focusing on. And again, just keeping it so simple. But at the moment, you've got 2 really specific focuses: sleep and play.
Yeah.
Wow. Mate, you're living the life of a baby. It's brilliant. This is genius. Like, you're going to the most natural fundamentals for any human between the ages of 0 and 5. So this is maybe the natural way we're meant to be living.
Well, I mean, I've told you this before. It's just, and I've said it before on the podcast too. I don't think adults are a real thing. We're all just big children, and we're pretending to be more serious than we are.
Oh,
right? I mean,
so much more serious.
We're just pretending. We're just pretending because we think that the more serious I pretend to be, the more people around will take me seriously. But really, you don't want people to take you so seriously, because then it ruins all the bloody fun.
Yep.
Well,
how many people do you know that are just being so serious and that are just living a life that they're really enjoying or that you would want to emulate?
I don't know. I don't think anyone who's living super seriously can say that they're enjoying it.
Yeah.
I just don't. And if they are, I think they're just pretending and lying.
And here's the thing, right? I think the modern game of life has been designed to be played so seriously. Right? All the things are so serious. There's nothing fun or playful about an employment contract. Like
Yeah.
there's very little that's playful and fun about how a university degree's scheduled. Like even school, going 9 to 5, 5 days a week.
Well, you know what? I think
Right.
the core of the success that I've experienced in my keynote speaking career or my workshop kind of teaching business, I think the core reason why those things have become successful is because I play in those.
Mm.
I play with magic on stage. And then adults have fun and they're kind of like, whoa, fun. I haven't experienced this for a while. And then in my workshops, there's so much play in it.
Yeah.
There's so much improv. There's so much magic. There's so much laughing. There's so much humor. So to me, I think a huge part of why I've experienced success in my businesses that have, gave me wonderful financial abundance is because I introduce a lot of play in a realm where adults are always being super serious.
Oh, and it's so refreshing. Like like Chantel's one of the best that I know at living life with a playful approach. And it's such a nice reminder as well for me when I can get serious or into something I'm doing and just being pulled out of that by having a joke, having a laugh, and the energy that she brings from that side.
Mm-hmm.
There's power in it, and especially when you do see an adult do it. Like it's
inspiring,
really
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
sure
really is. It really is.
And it energizes everyone around you. Right? Like there's a different energy to being serious and focused, to being playful and joyful and having fun.
Well, look, I mean, now that we're kind of nearing the end of this podcast as well, I want to say that in order to live an essential life and to work out these things that are essential, one of the most important things that the book talks about is the power of saying no.
Mm.
And how if you are someone who's saying yes to a lot of things, I now kind of really see clearly the importance of saying no. Similar to the whole metaphor of throwing away clothes in your closet so that you leave room for clothes you enjoy. You've got to throw away some opportunities to be able to leave room in your life for the opportunities that will bring you more fulfillment and joy. And I used to say yes to so many people that, oh, Vin, can we catch up for coffee? Oh, Vin, can we come and hang out? And oh, Vin, can we, and I say no so much now. And I've told you this before and I've shared this on the podcast before, but I'll just say it again. And I literally say to the person, hey, I've learned in the last 2 years of my life that the more I say yes, the more I'm saying no to my family. So I'm going to have to decline this opportunity with you, not because, if I had all the time in the world, I'd love to spend time with you, but I don't. And I want to spend time with my son and my wife. And everybody understands. I've never had someone come back and say, oh, you're a jerk. I have had some people come back and say, oh, well, how about we schedule something, for next week? And then that's when it becomes hard. But then that's when I just throw in the line, hey, I'm booked out for the next 6 months. How about we do something in early 2022? And then when I say that, I find most people go, oh, okay. And then I never hear back from them again anyway.
And if somebody does reach back out in 6 months' time, who knows?
Yeah, I'll consider it.
That's a decent level of persistence.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But I don't kind of reflex and say yes. I generally say no. My reflex now is generally no. And I did that before reading this book, and I have to say that has left a lot of space in my life. And it's like that metaphor that I remember an interior designer saying once, don't clutter your house full of stuff, because life is what happens in the space between your furniture. And if you just pack your house full of furniture, you're leaving no space for life, for living. And a living space should be filled with space, not things, so that you can live in the space. So to me, I've always kind of had that in the back of my mind as a philosophy for life as well. And I love how this book brings it up. If you want more tactics on how to say no, I love how this book gives you a bunch of tactics on how to say no, because no is so important. But like you said at the beginning of this podcast, don't say no all the time that you're not leaving any opportunity for serendipity. So it's a balancing act.
Yep. I like that. And I love the context that you put with your no. I think that's really important because sometimes you nearly feel like I hate the dirty feeling of lying with a no, when it's, and I used to catch myself where it'd be like, oh no, sorry, I can't do it because I've got this commitment that wasn't even a real one, so I'm such a big fan now of just telling the truth, but being transparent and providing context if there is a no.
Well, and the way to do it even before having to say no is just have clear boundaries.
Yep.
I think, again, we learned from the previous books that we've read that having boundaries is critical to being someone that's compassionate and kind.
And even if you don't want to say no, you can be more proactive with how you say yes. So another tool is block out, like if it's, say, meetings, for example, you could block out 1 hour a month or 2 hours a month that people can book into and they can have a chat. It's just there for a chinwag or whatever it's going to be, like if you choose to go down that path. So you can even structure your no's a little bit different so that you're not reactive to them. You're more proactive with the stuff that might fall into that box. Like I'm a big fan of, even, it's not necessarily a no, but inevitably there's things in our lives that we have to do that maybe don't inspire too much joy and fun, that they're just part of living life, like call it maintenance type of activities. And I'll just schedule them in. And I know that it's 2-3 hours once a month or whatever it is. And then that's the time for all like errands, or like for me, it's generally finance and legal. Like they're the two things that, say, from a business perspective, I hate having to do. So I need to then combine that with something really fun sandwiched around it so that it discounts the lack of fun that's inevitably going to come from finance and legal.
No, I love it. I love that you're introducing so much more fun into your life as well. That's fantastic, man.
Yep.
And I mean, I look at this book as just a book where it pushed me to reevaluate my life and to almost get a comb through my life and go, what's important, what's not important. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a very refreshing experience, because I think going through my life now, I have got it down to pretty much the essentials. But what I realized through doing this was that there were essential things that I was missing. It wasn't so much me going through my life and going, oh, don't need that, don't need this, don't need that. It was more of a, hey, I've got a lot of things that are already very essential, but man, I'm missing this play thing. And that's something I'm adding to my essential list. Mm-hmm. And another one you gave me, which is journaling.
Sorry, go. Journaling. There was another cool one when you're going through this exercise of, say, reviewing right now. Like, say, if you're in the box of really overwhelmed, heaps of things on it. He mentions a concept that I really like, which is called zero-based budgeting.
Oh, yeah.
Where used by even a lot of people in the business world, where if you're heading, say, into a new financial year, a tactic you can use is zero-based budgeting, where, all right, well, I have this much money, I have this much time, I have this much energy. How am I going to budget it over the next 3, 6, 9 or 12 months? And then you can start breaking down. You're like, all right, well, from looking at my calendar and my financial statements or my bank statements, whatever it is, I allocate X amount to all these things at the moment. And you can even look back, say, over a 3-month period, a 6-month period, really break it down, very granular, and then start saying, okay, well, if I was starting from scratch now, and as we head into this new chapter, how can I justify each of these line items or calendar items or expenditure? And then breaking it down and adding some specificity. So you might have a Lego budget of $2,000. You might have a travel budget of $5,000 or whatever it is. You might have a go for coffee allowance, a couple of $100, whatever it is, depending on your current situation. But I love that notion of zero-based budgeting. And then you can start factoring in, and on each line item, maybe putting a little E next to it and being like, oh, well, this is essential. This is something that I was spending on that I don't really need to. I don't use it anymore. Don't need it, or I can't use it.
What helped me really go through this exercise of determining if I was doing everything that was essential and everything I'm doing, is it essential, was the fact that I was already scheduling my weeks. I was able to look back through the last couple of months and go, was everything that I was doing in the last couple of months essential? And I think for people who don't schedule their weeks and don't kind of have a diary, kind of mapping out what they're doing from day to day, hour to hour, it'll be more difficult to do this. So something that's useful as well as you're kind of analyzing and reviewing is if you document an entire fortnight or an entire week. Yep. Just everything you do for the next week, just document it.
Write it down. It's cool.
And just write it down and then review. And when you're looking back at it, which ones were essential? You know, did I spend an hour on the phone gossiping with someone about somebody else? And at the end of it, I just felt more angry. You know, just log these things and realize, well, was it important that you did that? Maybe not. And start just becoming more aware. And I love what you said earlier as well. And it's just that awareness. As you become more aware, change starts to happen from that point. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like the concluding thought I really have is that we live in such a busy world that we're all doing too much. And often we're all feeling lost and feeling like we don't know how to live a purposeful life, when in actual fact, it's just that you're living a non-essentialist life and you're just so overwhelmed with so much that you're trying to do. So I reckon take a lesson out of essentialism and try to just strip out all the things that are not essential and live a life that is on purpose, live a life that's a little more intentional, and understand that what is essential today may not be essential next year, and that's okay. But as long as you're aware of it, you can kind of shift and move and still end up at a destination you want to be at, as opposed to doing everything and sometimes not moving at all.
Beautiful. Awesome wrap up. And the only thing that I would add, just a line that I highlighted in the book, which I really liked, was if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will.
Ooh, that's potent. Great way to end the episode. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this podcast. And remember, if your name is Chantel and you're listening to this episode and you haven't reviewed our podcast, please do leave us a review. And if your name generally just starts with any letter of the alphabet, please do leave us a review. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. We're open to all letters in the alphabet. I like that. That's good.
See you in the next podcast.